Okay, so let me share my screen.
Really quick, has anyone seen the virtual training yet? The video that we have? No? All right, well.
Well, perfect then. Okay.
First for you.
Yeah, so just so you know, this video, like I said before, gives a really good overview of what you'll actually be doing to participate, and it is available right on our website. So we have a section here at plasticwaveproject.org, and you just hit our work and then microplastics, and you get a lot of information about the program and some videos here as well. So we'll start with our virtual training. Is the sound okay?
No, I don't hear any sound, but that's
Okay.
okay.
I don't hear it, Rita.
You could bypass this part and just move up to the other part. That's fine.
No, your part is great, Joe.
Okay, hold on. Let me just try again really quick.
You're not getting out of that quickly out of speaking, Joe.
You're the star of the video, Joe.
Yeah.
Totally.
Just fast forward.
What's it like to learn science on Brilliant? Brilliant gets you hands-on
there's
to help you
volume now.
learn by doing.
Of Save Coastal Wildlife, which is a nonprofit located along the Jersey Shore. And what we do is we help to educate people about the biodiversity along the Jersey Shore. All the seals, the whales, the dolphins, the horseshoe crabs, and the fish and the seabirds. We help to educate people about all that wildlife that you can find along the Jersey Shore. And one of the biggest problems impacting coastal wildlife today is plastics. Plastics, unfortunately, can be found just about everywhere. They're in our clothes, they're in our containers for food, they're in our electronics, they're in our cars, they're everywhere. In fact, sometimes they're in the food itself. And we've been using plastics in abundance at least since the 1950s, and now that plastic is breaking down into smaller and smaller bits and impacting the web chain, or the food chain, I should say, the web of life. And so now fish who are thinking that little tiny bits of plastic are plankton are ingesting that into their stomachs. And sometimes we find dead fish along the Jersey Shore, we find little bits of plastic inside their stomach. And that fish that are alive, that are ingesting plastics, they might be eaten by seabirds like gulls and gannets. And sometimes when we find dead birds along the Jersey Shore, inside their gizzards or stomachs are tiny bits of plastics. So we are starting a monitoring program with the folks from the Plastic Wave Project to see just how bad the plastic problem is along the Jersey Shore. We need your help. We want you to volunteer with Plastic Wave Project and Save Coastal Wildlife to help us monitor our beaches to see how much plastic is along the Jersey Shore. So stay tuned. We got a beautiful day here. We're located at Sandy Hook, and we were going to educate you about how to monitor microplastics along the Jersey Shore. Thanks, everybody.
Let's get started on materials. All materials used for this experiment were repurposed items. We encourage you to get creative and reuse what you already own. For this project, you'll need 1 square meter, 9 jars of any size, 1 sifter and 1 trowel, and a friend to lend a hand and record important data. Labeling your samples will be crucial to this research, so please remember to label clearly and accurately. Information to include are the following: beach location, the date, your sample location, so whether this was your dune line, your high tide line, or your low tide line, you're going to want to illustrate that, as well as the sample number. So Dune 1, Dune 2, Dune 3, etc. And then lastly, your initials. Now that you have chosen your site, this may be a favorite beach of yours, it's time to get familiar with where you will be sampling. Please refer to this graph as a guideline. You will be sampling 3 different areas at your site. These areas include the low tide line, the high tide line, and lastly, the dune line. For each area, you should be collecting 3 different samples. Note, each square on this graph represents a collected sample. This means that you should have 9 total samples collected when you're finished. As you can see, 3 different samples were collected along the dune line, 3 samples collected along the high tide line, and lastly, 3 samples were collected along the low tide line. To begin, drop your meter square in a randomly selected area along the low tide line. Within this square, pick one random spot. Using your trowel, take 3 scoops from the same spot and scoop into sifter. Begin to sift through sand like so. When you've sifted through most of the content, place what's left into your labeled jar. This may include any sand and rock that did not get sifted through. You will go through samples later on at home anyways. Moving into a new area within the square, repeat the previous steps. You'll be collecting a total of 3 times in 3 separate areas within your square, emptying all content into the same jar, jar 1. You've now completed your first sample. Moving down to our next sample square along the low tide line, take roughly 5 to 10 large steps and place your square meter down at your next location. Continue the previous steps. Moving down the low tide line for the 3rd and last time, continue the previous steps. Continue this process moving onto the high tide line, and then lastly, the dune line. Congratulations, you've completed your first sampling. Now it's time to sort through your samples. So, what do microplastics look like? The most common microplastics you will probably come across during your sampling are plastic fragments and nurdles. Plastic fragments are tiny pieces of plastic that have been broken down from larger plastic products. These pieces range from 5 millimeters or smaller. Next on the list are nurdles. Yikes, these guys come directly from the source. That's right, the plastic industry is responsible for these spills and how they end up on our shores. Did you know that these pellets are what make up all plastic products? These nurdles are melted down in the factory and are the building blocks for all plastic products.
After watching this video, we're confident that you are ready to put your citizen science skills to the test. Let's tackle this plastic crisis together. Enjoy!
Okay, so does anyone have any questions about what was just covered on the video?
I have one.
Hmm?
Do you need permission from anyone if you go to a certain beach?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a really good question. I actually was thinking about that the other day. You don't need any permission because it's just like you're cleaning up the beach and anyone can do that at any time. Yeah. Mhm.
Let me just clarify that for a second, though. So there are certain beaches along the Jersey Shore that are sort of private, at least the access to them is sort of private. So the one beach that comes to mind is over in Leonardo. There's an area over there where if you're going to go up along the dune lines, the people who live in that area consider that to be their property. So I would just be careful in some cases, especially on the Bayside beaches. And then during the summertime, you want to be careful, like in Seabright. There are certain beaches during the summertime that public access is really horrible, and there's a lot of beach clubs. And so you got to be careful on those beaches as well too. But if you're going to a town beach, if you're going to a beach that's owned by the town or managed by the town or managed by the state or the county, you should be okay. You will definitely be okay in that case. Just be careful on any beaches that are managed by beach clubs or there's a lot of houses nearby.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. I realized that I was thinking of only like state managed beaches that you're allowed to do it there.
You're in
Cool.
Europe, so Europe, I'm sure all the beaches are very nasty.
Yeah. Okay, Beth.
Yeah, thanks for the session this morning.
Mhm.
I have found that the sand is frequently wet, especially at the low tide mark. And so for me, what I've done is collected the samples, brought them home, put them in my garage and let them dry it out before I try to sift them. Do you have a better system for dealing with wet sand? It's also, faster beach collection when it can be really cold and windy on the beach rather than trying to sift everything on the shore.
Mhm.
But wondering if you have any tips that you would recommend for dealing with wet sand.
Yeah, I would say that what you've done already is pretty good. We also say that if there is a lot of wet sand at the low tide line, just go as close as you can to the low tide line in dry sand. So you can just like bypass the wet sand altogether and just go as close as you can to the low tide line in sand that's dry.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Mhm.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So besides like the direct east side that like the beach is on, can you also do this on the bay side where it's pretty tidal right around like a little tiny peninsula?
Yeah, you can absolutely do this on a bay side as well. The like locations might look a little bit different, like there might not be a dune or something like that. But as long as you like pick 3 locations like throughout the beach, then that's totally fine. So close to the water. There should be like a tidal change that you can see visible even on the bay side. And then if there's dune, go to the dune. If it's more like, then if it's not a dune, then you don't do a dune.
And you'll definitely want to make sure that you are sampling at low tide. You want to sample at low tide regardless, but if you're on the bay side, you might have less beach if it is a higher tide. So you want to pay attention to the tides when you're sampling a smaller area like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess similarly to that question, are you interested in these rivers that are a little tidal, like that feed into the Barnegat Bay and stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so right now, where we're at with this, it's pretty much anyone who, you can pick anywhere you want next to the water. It can be beach, it can be river, it can be the bay. We're really interested in getting as many different locations as possible. And then once we have kind of an idea about the locations we've already sampled, then maybe we could be a little bit more specific on sending people to certain locations each year. But yeah, right now it's kind of like the more varied locations we have, the better, to get a better picture of like what's happening with the microplastics. So rivers would be great, because if you wind up finding a lot at a river, then that could mean something. And also on that note, if you don't find anything, that's also really important for us, because it means that maybe there isn't, like, they just aren't congregating there, which is just as valuable as us finding out where they do go. So just a little note about that as well.
And so we're going to be collecting at like a specific interval. So we're going to choose a spot and kind of commit to that spot.
Yeah. So I would say if you pick a spot, try to do it for a year. And if you're like, I don't really like the spot, it's not easy for me to get to, then you can always change it. But it's not like super, super essential that you stay at one spot the entire time, because this is like a monitoring citizen science program. So, you know, it is flexible in that way.
And then my other question was, it seems like these nurdles would be kind of hard to differentiate over rocks or pebbles or something like that. Like, how do you find those or pick them out? I don't know. It seems like that would be tricky.
So for nurdles, it's all about touching them. So if you picked up a pebble and a nurdle, you can kind of tell the difference once you kind of take your fingertips to the actual product. A nurdle feels like plastic. So picking up that nurdle and putting like an indent with your fingernail into the nurdle, you'll be able to kind of differentiate between the two, the nurdle and the pebble. You might not, you know, if it's cold and you want to bring that home and you want to look at it later on, you can do that. But you can definitely, once you start becoming familiar with what a nurdle is, you're going to be able to spot it out real quick. So just kind of touching and indenting with your fingernail is a great way to kind of figure out if it's natural or not.
Okay. How long does it usually take you guys to get these 9 samples and sort through them?
I would say the actual sampling can vary, but maybe like about an hour. And then the sifting, the like sorting through at home also again varies. Like you could also, it depends on like what your sample looks like. Because if you dump it out and there's nothing, then that could take really quick. But if you see that there's a lot of mixed in stuff there and you have to spend more time going through, it might take a little longer. And yeah, what Beth just wrote in the chat, there also is another way to test for nurdles. It's the hot needle test, which is basically you know, heat up a needle or something and then touch it to the plastic. And if it melts, it's plastic. If it doesn't, it's a rock. Which is one way, but it's usually you can find it with just like looking at it and like squeezing it and seeing if it's plastic or not. But if you want to be like extra sure, then the hot needle test is a great way. But yeah, we recommend the sorting be done at home and over like a light background. So whether it's like, you know, on a old sheet or like a piece of paper or whatever it is, something that's light, so that way you can kind of see the difference, because it starts to stand. It's really hard to do it like in a sandy background. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with the waste, the plastic waste, once you have it?
Yeah. So once you have the microplastics, it's kind of tricky to get rid of them responsibly, because they are so small. What we recommend is you can either give them to us, because we use them for educational purposes, like to show people what they are. Or you can get creative and like make something with them. Like if you have a lot, there's been suggestions about doing like mosaic type work with it, or like if you like art, you know, you could incorporate them into art. Or like the other option is you can throw them in the garbage, which sucks, but it's kind of the only way to get rid of them right now. But yeah, you can also just give them to us because we collect them.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. But if anyone has any ideas, obviously let us know what you think. I think at the last year, someone suggested something really cool. They said, yeah, like if you use plaster of Paris, like with a little project, you can like put them in there to like make a little like, I don't know if you ever did like where you put your handprint in it. You could do that and like use it as decoration, but yeah, you can definitely get creative with them. And we did have an art show where someone made this like beautiful resin thing out of microplastics. So it's kind of like just up to you with whatever, if you get inspired to do something with them, or if not, you know, give them to us, or you can throw them in the trash. Does anyone else have any other questions that are popping up?
I got a quick question for you. So I've seen some videos about people doing microplastic beach research or monitoring in various locations. And at the end, when they're done sorting, one last thing they'll do is they'll put their samples in water and see if anything floats. Is that something, I mean, what do you guys think about that?
I think that's another option. I know Nadia and I have used that technique to sort through samples before. It's almost like a try, like you can try it and see if it works, but it might not get everything. But yeah, Erica, you can elaborate on that.
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? I'm like driving and I don't mean to be so loud if I'm screaming in everyone's ear.
You're good.
Okay, so to answer, Joe, that's a great question. It likelihood that would work for some plastic, but because that it just really depends on the type of plastic, it'll have a different buoyancy. So like Rita was saying, like it might work for some, but others it won't. So just again, just kind of depends on which type of plastic we're talking about. But it can definitely be something that folks can consider along with the hot needle test and the other types of things that we have suggested.
Yeah, and I will say, if you're getting a bunch of sand and stuff wet again, it makes it hard to like sift through things. So it's kind of, yeah, you might want to play around with whichever option kind of works best for you. But I know it also can make things a little harder when everything's wet too.
I have another question. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, don't be. This is what this session is for.
I don't know if I'm getting like ahead of myself or if you're going to go over it, but do we put this in like a report form and then submit it?
Yeah, so that's actually a perfect segue into what I was going to go over next. I was actually going to show everyone all the different documents that you'll use to participate, and just give you like an overview of where everything is, how to access everything and all that stuff. So basically the way we run the program is over email and on this Google Classroom. If any of you are familiar with Google Classroom, we have a classroom that everyone joins, and that's where you can access all the information, but it's also available on all of our websites. So I'm going to share my screen again, and then you can see where everything is and what everything looks like, so you're prepared when you go ahead and do it. So let me share my screen again. Okay, so on our website, like where the video is we just watched, if you scroll all the way down, there is all of the information on our website here. So we have really 4 documents. This microplastic sampling procedures basically gives you a super detailed written out instruction manual basically for what you do. And this is what it looks like for this year. So that's always accessible to you on our website. And also in the Google Classroom. And it just goes through literally everything you could possibly, maybe not everything you possibly need to know, but a lot of stuff, the dates, where explanations of the different locations, how you do it. These are all nurdles, these pictures here. So, and then, yeah, so definitely, and our contact information. So definitely go through that first before you even go out to sample, because that's a great tool to use. And then the next thing is, this is just a picture of where the locations are. So the low tide, high tide dune line. And then this is the data sheet you'll use. So you can fill it out while you're sampling or after. Probably while you're doing it's the easiest, so you don't forget anything. But this is the data sheet that you'll use. You'll just include your name if you're affiliated with any group, the date, the location. So, you know, I'm going to sample at Sandy Hook Beach Lot E or whatever. And if you can include the GPS coordinates, that would be great. A way to find the GPS coordinates is to type in your location on Google Maps, and then underneath the location will have like the GPS coordinates. So you can also just copy that and write it down or type it. And then the moon phase, which you can just Google. And then this is the start time and the end time. So when you start your sampling, when you end your sampling, and then the times of the tides are also important, because we are interested in, you know, what the tides maybe do to how plastics move. And then just general information about the day that you're sampling, the temperature, if the water conditions are rough or calm, and then if there's any recent weather events, which is also really important to include, because a lot of times, you know, you see garbage and things congregate on beaches after storms, or maybe there's nothing after storms. So yeah, if you go out and there was like a big rainstorm a couple of days before or the day before, that's also really important to write down. And then any other notes. So, you know, if you saw like a lot of plastic bottles that day, or maybe you notice some trends about anything that's going on that day. So that's also really important to include. And then here is where you will, so after you sample and sort through everything, you can just write down the numbers of microplastics you find in each sample. So the dune, the high and the low, and then sample 1, 2, 3. And then did you find any nurdles? So in general, if you found any nurdles, just let us know yes, or if you're not sure, you're not sure. And that's the entire data sheet. So once you have that information filled out, what we do to make it easier for everyone is you can actually submit the data online. And like you can see, this was last season in the winter, but there'll be a updated submission sheet or a Google form that you will use to submit the data, which will be on our website, and we'll also email it out to everyone. But so that's where you'll submit the data. And then we have this, the last thing is our photo submission sheet. And this is basically where you'll place all the microplastics that you find, take a photo of it, and that will also be included in the Google form that you submit. And the ruler is not entirely accurate, but it's just kind of there for like reference in a way, but we don't actually measure the sizes. So it's not as important that the ruler is perfect. It's just kind of there as like a little guide where you can put the microplastics. So perfect. And I actually want to, about this sample sheet or the submission sheet, if you want to just use like one of them, like you can print one out, and then instead of filling it out on paper, you can print one out, put your plastics on the piece, take a picture. And if you're familiar with like editing in a PDF, you can then change your picture to a PDF and just type everything down and then submit them. Or we've also had one volunteer, like they printed out and laminated a sheet. So that way they can just like reuse the same one again and again. So they don't need to print out like 6 different sheets or 9 different sheets every single time, which is great. But yeah, and if you can't print this out for any reason, just take a picture of the microplastics on a white or like a light background and just attach it to when you submit the data. So whatever's easier for you works for us. Okay, and then the last thing is where you sign up. So if you want to join the program and volunteer with us, you can sign up right on our website right here, sign up to be a volunteer, but I'll also share the link in the chat right after I stop sharing. And definitely, well, you have to do this if you want to join. So do that. And then once you do that, we will add you to our Google Classroom and you'll get on our mailing list. So that way you can receive all the information that we share. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything else. I guess I will show you, this is our our Google Classroom. So you can see people submit their data here sometimes, but it's better to submit it on it doesn't really matter, but submitting it through the Google form is great. And you can access all the different guides and the submission sheets and everything on our Google Classroom as well. So that's pretty much it. That was a lot. Does anyone have any questions about all that stuff, the technical side of things?
So you want a photo for each of the 9 samples? Okay.
Yes. So for any sample that has microplastics in it, it would be good to take a picture of it just so we know what they were and can look at it. So when we're like looking through all the data, we have like a visual reference of what it was. But the most important thing is like the number of them. So if you like can't take pictures or forget, like it's not like gonna ruin it or anything. Yeah.
And you know, I am thinking about doing, I mean, I would, you know, go to whatever location that's nearby me that's, you know, best for, you know, the data that you need. But if I do this like little river beach in my neighborhood, you know, there isn't a dune line and I don't see there being like much change at like what you're calling the dune line. Would you still want that row of samples? But it's, you know, because like the river's tidal, I think by like about 2 feet. It's not like the bay, definitely not like as tidal as the ocean. But yeah, I guess I just want to, I don't know if that's like worthy data, like of this little river beach kind of thing.
What river is this?
This is the Matitaconk.
So you're in Bricktown, right? So that would be near the Bricktown area. So what public access would you use to reach the river?
Well, so my neighborhood has like a little private beach that's like for the residents that's like really close to my house that I could use. And there's also well, a neighbor of mine who lets me access that they have a private beach in their house. It's like the house behind my house.
And
so I mean, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so what do you think the width of the beach is?
Oh man, I'm always bad with this stuff. Like a couple 100 feet. Like they're, you know, yeah, so anywhere between like definitely over 100 feet each of these beaches, but maybe less than 200. I don't know. I'm bad at this. Not as big as a football field. An Olympic-sized pool.
So what you can always do is you can just, I'm sure it's fine, but you can always just like send us a picture of the beach and then we can, you know, not that we have to approve it, but we can kind of give you an idea. Well, this looks good to us. We can also maybe see what you can use as a dune line for when you're sampling. But if there isn't a visible dune line, you can always just sample the highest point of that beach.
Yeah.
So the top of the beach. But if you're like still feeling confused, like feel free to email us a picture and, you know, we can help you decide whether or not we think that's a good location for you. But if it's something that's like near your house and you feel connected to it, then like we always kind of encourage you to choose that site, just as long as you are able to sample it. So definitely send us a picture and we'll let you know if.
Yeah, I guess I just don't know. I mean, I'm happy. I'm at the beach all the time anyways, but I don't know how big your, you know, community effort is. Like there could already be people collecting on these beaches that are close to me. So I can guarantee nobody's doing this, you know, on the river, or not guarantee, but I doubt it's doubtful, you know? So I guess I just wanted to, I am willing, I can give you a couple locations, I guess. And if there's one that seems like is a hole in your data, I could do that.
Yeah, that works for us.
Yeah.
I mean, you're more than welcome to sample the same beach as someone else, but it is better to choose a location that maybe no one's touched before. So definitely send us a photo, but I think that should be fine for you to sample.
Yeah, I think so too. And based on what we've seen over the last well, this is the third year. So over the last 2 years, the highest points of the beaches seem to actually be where microplastics wind up staying, which kind of makes sense. Because things aren't getting like washed away as the tide changes. So I would definitely still include it. If it's not necessarily a dune, that's okay. You can just make a note like, okay, this isn't a dune, it's just the highest point in the beach, and that's what it is. And that's totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the frequency again that we're doing this?
Yeah, so it's just 4 times a year. So it's we go around when the seasons change. So that's why we call them like seasons. So the spring season is coming up next week. It begins March 8th. I'm going to just make sure before I say it. March 18th, I believe. Yeah, March 18th until April 3rd. And it's usually about a 2 to 3 week period that we tell people to go out one day during that 2 to 3 week period, just so at least it's kind of consistent for everyone. But I also say, like, if you can't go out exactly during that 2 week period, like if you need a few days after, a few days before, like that's also totally fine. But yeah, so then after that, it would be the summer and then the fall. Yeah. Great question so far. Is everyone clear with the like what I said about like submitting data and where everything was? Okay, cool, Beth. You have a question.
Thanks. If we find something that's not micro, that's like a cap for a water bottle, do you want us to include it, or are you really just looking for microplastics?
Really just looking for microplastics. So technically the definition for microplastics is anything under 5 millimeters in diameter. That can be kind of hard to distinguish just using your eyes. So for this particular study, our definition of microplastics is anything that kind of like winds up on the surface of your sifter after you've, after you've sifted through the sand and you're going through it, anything that you find there. But if it is like pretty big, then don't count it as a microplastic. You can still send us a picture of everything you find. And then we can like go through it and like count, double check. But yeah, include the number of only microplastics that you find in like the actual data. But if you want to like send a picture of all of the plastics you found, that's also totally fine.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you can always take note of larger debris that you're finding, because if your beach is polluted, chances are there are microplastics. Maybe you're just not finding them in your samples. But I think it is good to note whether or not, you know, your beach was clean or there was large debris all over the place. So definitely take note of that. I think there might be a spot for that on the sample
in the trends area.
Yes. Yeah. And we do get a lot of people submitting data that says like, I didn't find any microplastics, but there was a lot of macroplastics. And that's also like really good to know, because chances are then there probably are microplastics that are just really small that we can't see with our eyes, or there will be in the future. So that's also good to know.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I would just add one quick thing. We had a question like this last Sunday over in Asbury Park. Just if you can, don't forget to bring like a larger bag or container to pick up that macroplastic. So not only are we looking for microplastics, but in a way we're trying to clean up the beaches as well too a little bit. So if you could help us out.
Yes, and that actually made me think of another thing I wanted to share. In the video and in the methods, we say like use jars. But if you don't have 9 jars, like you can use any kind of container that you have, whether it's like a Tupperware you don't use, like a paper bag, an envelope, whatever it is, that kind of just is a storage unit for a sample and can be labeled. So that way you don't lose track of which sample it is. And on that note, yeah, like you don't need to go out and buy jars. Like just if you have anything that's almost done, like peanut butter, whatever it is, you can always just use that over and over again.
Do you have like an instructions on how to make a sifter or?
Ooh, we don't yet, but that's a really good idea. So because it's kind of like use whatever you have on hand, we don't have that, but we recommend, so you can find, like, if you can find an old window screen, that's great, because the holes of a window screen is like kind of the perfect size. And then you can just like, staple it to like a wooden frame or like anything really. But yeah, so we don't have a guide, but that maybe is something we want to make.
If you go to the art supply store, they have frames for stretching canvas.
Mhm.
That might be a thought to use those because they have sizes already measured.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Or like if you have an old canvas that you don't want to use anymore, you could always take the art out and put a frame and put a window frame in.
A junky something ugly from the thrift store.
Yeah, that's a really good, so that's a really good point. I also wanted to say that that I think I think Erica found, I don't remember who it was, if it was a volunteer or if it was Erica, but they found a bunch of a bunch of windows just like for free at their local like waste facility. And then used, Erica, it was you, right?
Yeah, it was a friend of mine that we partnered up with, and we did a microplastics like workshop with her. She was able to get a bunch of frames from her local, I want to say landfill. She gave them a call and said, "Can I have some of your scraps?" And they said, "Sure, here you go." And she ended up creating a bunch of sifters that we now use and give out to some of our volunteers. That was really cool. They're like really nice too.
Yeah, and another thing is the Google Classroom is there for us to obviously share information with you, but also if there's something that you have a question with or need, we were talking about this earlier, that like it might be a great place to figure out if you can borrow tools from someone else, or like coordinate, lending of materials between people who might live in the same area as you, if that's something you want to do as well, if you're comfortable with. So yeah, that's also another option. And then, as the program develops, you might see changes in like resources and stuff, but yeah, so.
Another great thing that works, the fine mesh colanders that you might have in your kitchen, as long as the mesh is fine enough, that works as well. We use that as well. So window screen, fine mesh colanders, that works as well. And then I keep saying as well, but hopefully we can, maybe provide you guys with some materials by the fall. Hopefully we'll see. So.
Yeah, but definitely check out your local like thrift stores and dumps, I guess, because they usually have that kind of stuff.
Okay. And I know right now you're kind of just like trying to get a picture of, the microplastics, but I guess like what's the ultimate goal to use this data for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So hopefully as we learn where it is, we can get more specific with the sampling, so we can send people to certain locations where the most microplastics are existing. And then you can use that information to hopefully influence legislation and figure out where they're coming from to prevent it from happening in the future. So, you can't really say, oh, there's microplastics everywhere without like the proof that it's there. So hopefully this can be that proof to then be used in the future.
Eventually, we'd like to start mapping all of the data that you all are sending to us using GIS. So that's, the bigger picture with this program, and we are working towards that. But we are collecting the data and the more data we have, the more, you know, information we'll start to be able to gather, and you know, like Rita said, we'll be able to see where the microplastic hotspots are, encourage volunteers to maybe sample more towards those hotspots. If we see missing pieces to our mapping, maybe this location hasn't been touched yet, we can say, hey, to our volunteers, this spot hasn't been sampled out yet, let's send you here. So we're really starting to try to grow this program. With the more volunteers we have, the more beaches we can sample along the Jersey Shore, and we can kind of just get a better understanding of where these microplastics really are congregating. So we are really excited with this. I think that we're on to some real big things.
Yeah, and like I said before, I read a lot about microplastics all the time, and there really is kind of like this missing piece of information about where they are. And I think it's definitely like invaluable to try to kind of start to figure this out, because a lot of the problems with creating solutions to the issue is the fact that like you don't actually know what the problem is yet enough, which is what I've been seeing in like the real world about people who are trying to stop the issue. It's like, okay, well, we know it's an issue. We know that they exist. We kind of know where, but like there isn't like enough information to actually implement something effective to stop it from happening. So this is kind of the beginning of that.
No, it's great work. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we couldn't do this without all of you. So we
Yeah.
really appreciate you guys joining us.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else have any? Yeah. Any questions? Last question.
Anyone else have any questions?
So I know we were just talking about beaches to go that aren't populated. I'm closest to Sandy Hook and Seabright. So I know Sandy Hook gets done pretty often, I would imagine. There are a lot of people there. If so, what are the areas in Sandy Hook that aren't being tested a lot? Are there any?
You know, Sandy Hook is so big. There's definitely places that haven't been tested. I will look through all the locations again in Sandy Hook, and then if you want, I can just send you an email about it. Yeah, just shoot us an email, and then I'll go through everything, because there is places in Sandy Hook that haven't been done. Because it's I mean, it's so big.
Yeah, it's huge.
And also, like, even if it is like the same beach, I can guarantee you that someone did it at a different place on that beach.
Okay.
So yeah, there's definitely value in still going out to Sandy Hook. Also, Sandy Hook is in such an interesting location on the Jersey Shore that I think it's also really important to go there. So yeah, there's definitely room for more people on Sandy Hook.
Okay, sounds good.
Mhm.
Yeah, let me just also add too, because this is a common question I get all the time about this project is, you know, what beach can I go to? Because I figure a lot of people are going to this beach. It's a popular beach. But because, you know, the beaches are really wide and big, I mean, the probability that you're picking 9 samples at exactly the same place that somebody else is picking 9 samples, I mean, it's probably, you know, it's huge, it's high. So I would say, you know, don't worry about other people. If that's your favorite beach, go there. Because, you know, where you're sampling is probably a little bit different than where other people are sampling. So just, you know, have fun, go to your favorite beach. And if, you know, when we're looking over the data, when the Plastic Wave Project people looking over the data, if they see, you know, there's a lot of people going to the exact location, then they'll let people know about it. But otherwise, I wouldn't worry about it. Just go out to your favorite beach, have fun, and enjoy the day and pick 9 samples.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Like, one of the reasons why we say, like, go to a beach that you really like going to, because at the end of the day, like, this is supposed to be fun, and like, obviously microplastics aren't very fun. So go somewhere you enjoy spending time, that means something to you, that you have a connection with, that, you know, maybe you want to spend a day there. So yeah, it's really important to also just like have fun and don't worry about what other people are doing, because all of the information is invaluable. Okay, so if no one else has any other questions right now, we can go ahead and wrap everything up. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We all, like Nadia has already said, we all really, really appreciate you volunteering with us, and this program would not exist without volunteers. And yeah, I just want to stress how thankful we are for all of you who are interested in this issue and want to do something about it. And as always, please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to us on email or phone, whatever. We can always set up a call again if you have any other questions or confused. And also, if you find something to be confusing or think something could be done in a different way, please let us know. We definitely want to make this as easy and accessible for everyone. So yeah, if you have an idea that we haven't thought of, like, we're all people, so send it to us. We love getting feedback from you guys about how things go and how things are run. So please don't hesitate to let us know if something is like confusing or anything at all. So yeah. Thanks again, and I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your Sunday. Just let us know if you have any questions or anything at all, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. And if you signed up with the link that we just sent you, you'll be added to our mailing list and to all of the information we give out for the Citizen Science program. So you should be receiving an email from us probably within the next few days to a week about the spring sampling season. So that will just be a reminder to get out to go sample, and we'll have all of the important links and information that you guys need to complete your sampling.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.